WWDC is Apple's developer keynote. This is where they announce the next version of iOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS. Basically, it's their roadmap for the rest of the year. I'm really excited about this year in particular because it's rumored to be a really iPad-focused year. We're about ready to get a lot of awesome new iPad features. So I kind of wanted to go through a list of stuff that I wanted to see, some stuff that's rumored, some stuff that some other people have mentioned, and I'll kind of try and differentiate it as we go through. The first thing I want to see is updates to the Files app. The Files app came out with iOS 11 and it hasn't really received any sort of update since. And that's kind of ridiculous. It's almost 2 years and there's still bugs in there from when it was in beta. Right now, if you're have Dropbox or something installed and you try and add a folder from Dropbox to the favorites area, it'll disappear almost immediately. It absolutely drives me nuts. The favorites area basically only works for iCloud. A lot of the third-party cloud services don't really work very well in the Files app, which is kind of a bummer. I'd very much like everything to feel a little more native. I'd like to see some sort of tab and windowing option. Right now, in order to move stuff around, you have to start a drag, navigate back through, then do a drop. If I could have some sort of two tabs of files right next to each other or up top that I can just jump between, or two windows of files right next to each other that I can just drag and drop between, that would be incredibly handy. Also, the ability in Files to set some sort of default app. Right now, if you have a text file or something like that, the default app is, I can't really figure out how it's picked, but it's definitely not the user picking it. You basically have to just keep deleting apps until it lands on the default app that you want. In order to get text files to work, I had to delete 3 different apps just to get text files to open up in the right app for me. It was ridiculous. Next up is one that's really popular. I get comments about this one every day. External storage support. Some sort, USB, SD card, just external hard drives, native support in the Files app. Be able to browse them, copy stuff to them, copy stuff out of them, write to them from applications that have Files app support. Yeah, that would be huge. Lastly, for the Files app, when I import video or photos from an SD card or even AirDrop, I like it to ask whether I want to save it to Files or the Photos app, or a third-party option as well. So that would be a really good dialog box to have. This next one will probably be no surprise to anyone, but Pro apps. I've been talking about Pro apps needing to be on the iPad, specifically Apple Pro apps, since I've probably started this YouTube channel. That means Final Cut Pro, Logic, and Xcode. Now, I don't expect to see all of these at once. In fact, if I had to guess in order that they would come out, I guess we'd probably see Logic first, then Final Cut, then probably Xcode, just because, Logic will be a little bit easier to make because it's audio only. Then once you have the audio engine and all that stuff built, you could probably build Final Cut because then you need audio and video. And then Xcode, because of Swift and all of, a bunch of crazy libraries and APIs and all this weird stuff that has to go into building a program in order to make other programs, imagine that's just going to take a little bit longer. But Pro apps, I would very much like to see. I don't think we're going to see those with iOS 13, but any chance I have to talk about Pro apps needing to be on the iPad, I'm going to take it. I want to see better keyboard shortcuts and navigation support. So there's apps like Things 3 that you can use the arrow keys to navigate through the app, but not every app does that. It's something the developer has to implement, but I think that should be baked into the system. You should just be able to use arrow keys off of a keyboard to navigate through anything. I honestly believe that because it's how the Mac works. I mean, it's how you can navigate. It's how a lot of pro users navigate. They don't take their hands off the keyboard. They just, hit the arrow keys. I would also like to see some sort of global custom keyboard shortcut. Let me explain what this means. So there could be somewhere in settings that if you hit Shift Option Q or Shift Option W or something like that, that you can trigger a Siri shortcut or maybe create a new reminder in your task manager, whether that's reminders or a third-party app, create a new draft in Drafts or a text document, just some sort of global custom keyboard shortcut you can hit from anywhere, no matter what app or if you're on the home screen or wherever, you can hit it and it'll trigger that action. I think that would be huge for pro users. One thing that is heavily rumored is that we'll be getting a new home screen update, which this is kind of a big deal because the iPad has never really received a home screen update other than the dock feature. But supposedly there's this idea of more widgets and kind of more dynamic stuff. I would like to see it heavily focused on dynamic. And what I mean by that is in the morning, I have a bunch of shortcuts that I run and my phone recommends them to me on the lock screen, but I would have to run them from the lock screen. I'd like to see those just straight up on the home screen. Like that would be a great place for them. Or serve up files that I'm working on. Like I've been opening up one text file in particularly a lot this week, like a script or something. Have that right on the home screen so I can just tap it. It opens in the app that I've been working on it in, so probably Drafts, and then I can work from it right there. The home screen doesn't need to be focused on apps, but that is the place where apps go. So on the Mac, there's actually something called Launchpad, and nobody uses it because they think it's silly. But I actually think it might be kind of cool on the iPad just to have like an area where all your apps live, but then the apps that you want to have like shortcuts to or quick access to, you can add them to the home screen or the dock or wherever. Another one that's been heavily rumored is an update to multitasking. Now, this one seems to change every time the rumor gets reported. So there's not really a clear idea of what it's going to look like. But what I would like to see is the ability to take one app. So I'm going to use Drafts as an example. I use Drafts as an example a lot because it's my text editor. I'd like to have Drafts, and in it, I'd like to have a draft, so a text document, and another draft, so another text document side by side. So it's the same app, but two text documents from it side by side. I think that would be huge. You could do the same thing with photos, editing, or you name it. It could be huge. Safari already has this. You can drag it, take a tab, and then drag it next to it. So you can have two Safari windows side by side. This has been an idea I've heard from a couple of people, but the ability to create some sort of shortcut that will launch a pair of apps. A good example for me, at least, is when I record a podcast, I always have Skype and Google Docs open, and it's always a specific Google Doc, and it's always a specific person I call on Skype. So it'd be really cool if I could just have a button on the home screen that I could hit that will call my co-host on a slab of glass and have my Google Doc open ready for the show notes. I think that would be really nice. This one I think would be really popular with a lot of people. Some sort of dock mode. And what I mean by that is better external monitor support. So right now, if you plug an iPad into external monitor, if you have like a 16:9 monitor or 2:1 monitor, whatever, it doesn't fill up the whole screen. It just uses the 4:3 option, which the iPad is that aspect ratio. So if it could somehow fill up the whole screen and also have mouse support. So basically, if you think about it this way, your iPad is the one computer you need. So it's your portable machine, but then when you get home, you can plug it into like a dock or kind of something like this guy right here. It's like my little Kingston hub. You could just plug it right into there. It's got HDMI, USB, and USB-C. So it could literally handle everything, but you would need to have mouse support. You need to have better external monitor support, and even external hard drive support, which I talked about earlier. Shortcuts 3.0. Now, technically, I guess it would be Shortcuts 2.0, but the version number of Shortcuts right now is 2.2, I think, but that's because the version 1 was the workflow app. So Shortcuts 3.0, I would like to see location-based triggers and time-based triggers. So that basically means if I get to a certain place, run a shortcut automatically, or at a certain time of day, automatically run this shortcut. A better ability for third-party apps to create customizable shortcuts. So right now they can do Siri shortcuts, which are the things you can see in settings. But then there's also native shortcut actions for some third-party apps that were brought over from workflow. So it's kind of weird how some apps kind of have like this blessed shortcut option, and then some don't. And then the ones that don't, if they really want to get customizable, you have to use X callback URLs, which can get really confusing because then you have to look up the documentation every time you need to do something. If there is a better way for third-party apps to create native shortcut options, I think this would be a lot just better for everyone. It would be really nice, and I think it would help a lot of people learn shortcuts. So right now, if you do something with the Files app, you can either save something to Dropbox, and you can pick where you want to save it within Dropbox, or you can save it to iCloud. And if you save it to iCloud, it's only allowed in the shortcuts folder. And that's because of sandboxing, because apps shouldn't have access to other apps stuff, but shortcuts does have access to it because it's an Apple app, and it gets really weird. But basically, I want the file support. I want files, pure, true file support in shortcuts. Let me save a file to anywhere within iCloud, but also in the on my iPad section of files, so the local storage area. I've got a lot of stuff that I'd like to put there and like build shortcuts out for video projects and stuff like that, but right now I can only build it in the iCloud shortcuts folder, which is kind of annoying. With Safari, I would like to see a download manager, which is rumored. Supposedly, it's going to be a section in the updated Files app. There'll be a download manager for Safari, so you can download stuff from Safari. It'll go into Files, and you can do whatever you want from there, which is probably a good place for it. I like that idea. It'll probably just be like a Safari folder in iCloud, so you can access it from the Safari app or the Files app. Also, some sort of fake mouse mode. If they don't add a true mouse support to the iPad, or if you don't have a mouse plugged in, I like some sort of fake mouse mode. You get to those really old websites that just aren't built for touch input, and sometimes you just can't do anything with them because you're tapping on it, you're just hitting it, and it won't do anything. So if there's some way to fake mouse support, that would be really cool. Another thing that's rumored is that the iPad will always request to load the desktop version of a web page by default, which finally, I kind of think this should have happened a long time ago, but I will take what I can get, because especially like YouTube and stuff like that, there's no reason for the iPad to load the mobile site. It looks ridiculous, and there's really no need for it, especially now that pretty much all modern websites should be built around touch support. An update to the first-party productivity apps. So this is Calendars, Mail, and Reminder. Those three apps haven't really received any major updates in a long time. I'm going to throw Notes in there as well, even though it got a big update in iOS 9. I'd like to see that kind of update for these three apps. I think it would be really important. These apps haven't really received much since, I think, iOS 7 or 8. I think it was iOS 8. They could be a lot better. And I know there's a lot of great third-party options out there, but a lot of people that come to the iPhone or the iPad, they don't go and download third-party apps. They use these. So I think they should be as good as possible. Apple apps always used to be the reference app, especially on the Mac. They used to be like, hey, this is what the app should your third-party app that you're building, this is what you can kind of strive towards and then be better than. And I would like to see Apple get back to that, because right now they're definitely not there with their first-party productivity apps. My last one's kind of a bonus, because it's not really like an iPad feature or a productivity feature or anything like that, but the ability to get high-quality music in Apple Music. So whether that's FLAC files or whatever, I'm not really like super into audio, but I would like to have like higher quality versions of music. I think that'd be kind of nice to have. I know there's higher quality than what's being streamed from Apple Music right now. Whether you have to pay extra for that, I don't know, because bandwidth costs and stuff like that, it gets a little weird, but I would like to have the ability to get higher quality music. So that's kind of it for what I'd like to see in iOS 13. I'm curious what you guys would like to see, what you guys really want. First week in June, it'll be WWDC. I'm going to have a ton of videos coming about what's coming in iOS 13, kind of some walkthroughs. I'll do a Q&A that week. And then in September, when iOS 13 is officially released, I'll probably do a really big review about going in detail about how it all works with iPads and stuff like that, and any apps and stuff that are being updated for it. So be sure to subscribe if you're not already. I'm going to have a ton of coverage on it. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.